everyone, welcome back to Flow State Reactions. I am Starry and I am here yet again to react to The Lord of the Rings. This is the behind the scenes and this is the appendices, and we are now on the Taming of Sméagol. So you guys know that I have been excited to see what they did with Sméagol, because to me that is one of the most realistic looking creatures that I've ever seen on screen, and just the things that they had the characters doing with Sméagol, where they were like fighting, and so I just don't know how they were able to pull that off, and I'm really interested in checking that out. So thank you guys for joining me, and let's just go ahead and get into this episode. Okay, all right, everybody relax, and 1 2 3, let's flow. The Taming of Sméagol.
Gollum was definitely this pivotal character in all three movies. Even though he barely shows up in the first film. He's so significant in the second and the third because of what happens with that ring. No matter how successful Peter might be in terms of the telling of the story, if Gollum didn't work, it all would have just fallen apart. It would have been like a house of cards.
If Gollum wasn't believable, if he fundamentally didn't work, then you were going to kill not just the Two Towers, but the Return of the King.
I think we all sensed that, and Weta put obviously a lot of effort into making sure that they nailed Gollum.
They nailed Gollum, I'm trying to tell you.
The statement of fantasy art in the 20th century. So to be tasked with bringing Gollum to the screen as if he was a living, breathing creature was all invading in our thoughts for a long time.
We did spend quite a bit of time on Gollum at the very beginning of our planning design phase, because he was critical and he wasn't something we were going to leave to the last minute.
Gollum evolved over a period of time. He started out early as two-dimensional drawings, really inspired by Alan Lee and John Howe.
Everyone thinks they know what Gollum looks like, and everyone does know what Gollum looks like. He's pretty well conceived in everyone's mind.
Look at these illustrations.
Skinny wretch with long
Lord
fingers and hands.
Have mercy.
Webbed,
Ooh, these
huge
look
eyes,
worse than what Gollum turned out to look like.
Just miserable.
Yikes.
You know, and it came down to very subtle things. Although we all did little sketches of Gollum from time to time, most of that process was happening in the sculpting room, and there was a succession of maquettes and sculptures and full-size busts that seemed to go on to no end.
Ooh, look
Earlier
at that
on,
one.
when sculpting Gollum, John Howe was actually nice enough to lend us his body, and we got a few shots of that because he's very muscled and quite slender, so that was a really good reference.
I have Gollum hands anyway. I think I could have actually played Gollum. I'm thin enough to get away with it. I wouldn't have wanted to scrape myself around over all those rocks.
And I also used Iggy Pop as reference as well at times, because he kind of had enough of a muscle-skin ratio with very low fat levels and so forth. So he was actually kind of quite inspiring. And they were the studies that were based on Peter's expressions that he'd done.
Yikes.
They were great to have around.
And through a couple more generations of sculpting, ended up with what was the original lock-off for Gollum, which was finally realised by Mike Asquith.
I think in all we produced nearly 200 drawings and 100 maquettes of Gollum before we finally got to the point that we could begin the scannable maquette, which would be done at double scale, which would then be finally handed over to Weta Digital to be put into the CG environment.
This is so fascinating.
There was a huge lack of confidence in Weta's ability to do Gollum from the studio.
He's a CG character that actually has to deliver a dramatic performance. And it's easy to sort of say that, but it's a tall order.
You know, I remember Bob Shea saying to us, you know, Weta can do shots in this film, but you're not going to be doing Gollum. And so we realized that if we were actually going to do Gollum at all, we had to prove to New Line that we could.
So for the very first Gollum rig test that I did, I wanted to do something that would stand out and was a little bit noticeable. So I took the pre-production Gandalf puppet, and then I took Gollum and animated him jumping up onto the statue of Gandalf, and then I had him grabbing onto the head, ripping it off, throwing it on the ground, jumping down on top of it, and tumbling out of frame. They showed it to Peter, and he was kind of like, oh, okay. And then they showed it to New Line, and New Line kind of went, that's not what we want Gollum to be like.
Of course, at that point, we didn't actually have Gollum cast at all, and yet we wanted to impress the studio.
That's not how we want him to be.
Weta actually animate some lip sync.
We swear to do whatever he wants, please.
We screened these to Shea, and he looked at them and said, okay, you know, I think you guys can do it.
New Line had seen the tests of Gollum, so they thought they knew what it would look like. What they didn't know is that it would look infinitely better. than any test they ever saw.
Okay.
Films
It
live or
looks so
die
real.
on their casting. You know, if we got Frodo wrong, if we cast the wrong actor as Frodo, imagine the disaster or the mess these films would be. And I mean, any of the actors
That's
could,
true.
in a way, kill a movie if they're the wrong actor. And the same was true of Gollum. We were basically meeting actors who could do good voice work, because at that point we thought we were just looking for a voice actor.
Okay.
The original kind of way into the job
he's
was
Gollum,
getting a
Andy
phone call from
Serkis.
my agent
Okay.
saying, Andy, look, I don't know if you're interested, but they're doing this film Lord of the Rings down in New Zealand, and they want to see you for this CG character, to do a voice for a CG character, and it's probably about 3 weeks' work. And I was thinking to myself, well, you know, that sounds dull as hell. You know, I'm not interested in doing that. I'm an actor. I want to play. There must be a dozen good roles in that movie. You know.
Yeah,
And I started looking at
I
work,
heard
and
that.
I was like, oh my god, oh my god, this is just amazing. This character is the best written part in it.
He came in and he did a really memorable audition. He was just able
Andy
to generate
Serkis.
this weird voice.
My cats at home had a big impact on how
Oh, really?
Gollum's voice came
Okay.
about, because they get fur balls in their throats after they lick. So that
Yeah.
became that then became Gollum.
He was almost cast from the second that
What?
we met him.
Okay.
And what was interesting is that in order to create the voice, he was having to distort himself and put all this expression in his face, and that's where he was finding the voice. He was actually doing the character.
Oh my God, this is amazing. Oh my God, I brought tears to my eyes. He's so good.
There's no promise you can make that I can trust.
And it was really in that audition that I came to realize something that it never really occurred to me, and that the voice and the facial expressions and the energy are related. I mean, you can't separate the two.
Peter became convinced that he would use him not just to do the voice, but really to become the personality, the motivating, kind of unifying performance behind Gollum would come from Andy.
And action! What better way to actually create this CG character that Elijah
I am
and
floored.
John have to act with than to have actually an actor on set with them who
That was
they're able
so
to interact and
moving.
converse with.
Like,
for me, he's
him
Gollum.
acting
He can
as-
represent Gollum for me. So I, as a director,
Yeah.
don't have to sort of explain to everybody what this invisible thing is doing. We've actually got somebody.
Right. What in the world?
I was meeting all these people, totally jet lagged, 12 hours difference. And I remember
That
sitting
just
in
blew
a
me
tent
away.
with like loads and loads of orcs, bits of set were moving, and this was all literally as I got off a plane and was out of my head. And plus, walking into all this in the damn lycra suit, there was no introduction like,
good.
This is Andy, who's Gollum. I just came onto set and people were like, what's that? What's he doing? Why? And people were kind of like gave me a bit of a wide berth.
Became affectionately known as the gimp suit.
It was purely a functional thing, just to cover my body, to make my body surface the thinnest, that it could be. And also, of course, you have to wear the obligatory matching underpants.
Oh no, tidy whities.
Which obviously, make you score highly as a sexual object.
Andy's a very physical actor, which he needs to be, obviously, for the Gollum role. I mean, walking on all fours, it's hard to do.
There were many ways that
That
one
audition
could go
was so
with
impressive. I
the
will never get
physicalising
over
of
it.
Gollum. But for me, the one sketch really that nailed it for me was this pencil sketch by John Howe.
Look
and
at
that
that.
really influenced my decision to make Gollum crawl, which impacted very heavily on me and how I was to spend most of my time.
Andy Serkis on his first day was very much into character. He arrived on the set and
Okay.
immediately started climbing on the rocks.
And Randy Cook came and videoed me up on the side of Ruapeo in this mist. He brought in agility that I think was invaluable. And that agility comes from the fact that it's one of his hobbies.
It's bringing me
is a
so much joy.
mountain climber. So he had no fear scrambling up and down little cliffs and jumping around on this volcanic rock, and was great. So so the rock climbing has really paid off. And I was able to, I know how to get a good toe hold and finger hold on some pretty sheer, slippery rocks. Andy was there throughout virtually the entire production, interacting with Elijah Wood and Sean Astin.
He was in there performing with the actors,
in order to refine the blocking and the lines and whatnot, which we refer to as an animation reference. Then they pull Andy out and do what we refer to as a mime pass, where he wasn't there, but the other actors in the scene had to pretend he was there.
When she gets home with us, Mother lets you go.
Don't touch me. Tough working with Gollum. Sometimes he's there for you, sometimes he just disappears.
As nobody really understood the process, nor did Sean and Elijah, and they kind of thought, well, Andy's just going to be doing the voice because it's going to be a digital character.
And whenever there was a digital element, it was like, all right, okay, we'll do the reference pass, and then we'll do the real thing. Andy resented that fact. He resented the fact that people didn't honor the work he was doing while we were shooting it, and they didn't. We didn't at first.
I remember Sean saying to me, but am I supposed to act with you? Because I remember him looking past me, and I was going, Sean, you know, come on, let's, you know, hey, I'm here for you, buddy. You know, act with me here.
He had to fight for Gollum to be realized as an actor. And so I think a lot of the time when he would completely destroy himself physically, he was giving his all so that the reference pass would be as perfect as it possibly could.
And actually, I never thought about it from Elijah and Sean's point of view. I mean, at least I could look at them and they were in their costumes and they looked
Can't stop smiling.
like Frodo and Sam were supposed to look, but they had to act with someone who
Yeah, that's true. You don't look anything like Gollum.
Andy Serkis. He's
Very
playing
interesting.
a strange guy in tights. That suit took a beating too, because I remember they made it and it was all kind of clean and pristine. And Andy, his approach was so intense, and he did absolutely
there was no
everything
way.
every day and physically bashed himself about. So the suit was just screwed. He'd also, with the voice, he would give everything, and as a result, he'd be spitting and drooling.
Where Sam's cooking the rabbits,
My God.
and Gollum's going, oh, like that, and then he goes, and he spits. That's my gob of spit. It's mine, my own, my precious gob of spit, which comes out of my mouth, and it's like, yes, I am on screen. That's my saliva.
I mean,
he's like,
tore
I
up
am on
his
screen.
throat with that voice.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, that must be really hard.
We invented this juice called Gollum juice, which is basically honey and lemon and ginger.
And most of the time, I think it was warm. And he would sort of sip on that so that the Gollum voice wouldn't become ruined.
Yeah, Gollum juice. And they got Gollum / Smeagol on this trailer.
Strong brew so you can put more hot water in it to careful it's really hot.
You see, I can't speak like Gollum until I've drunk this.
Does Gollum get his own trailer?
Careful it's hot.
I just talk like this.
See you, Smeagol.
No, and I just didn't drink it by the bucket load.
See you, Smeagol.
I used to have bottles of it, and you just every
my God,
every
this
take,
is bringing me so much joy.
I used to really ache from it.
He went to all of these extremes to make
exceeding my expectations.
Came to life in the way that he saw it in his mind.
Yeah,
and that's an incredible achievement.
And he totally earned his right to be
I just
Gollum
said
the
it
hard
exceeded
way,
my
because
expectations.
He was coming into a situation where none of us really thought we needed Andy, other than his voice. I mean, but we gradually came to realize we couldn't do without him.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
That is a testament
that they were just going to use him for voiceover?
Into the character and to the energy that he put into it, his commitment to it.
I heard Andy tell a story.
I love how their ideas just evolve into something that they've never even considered.
I really nailed that.
It happens a lot.
Today. And then you go home and look in the mirror and say, oh, wait a second, that performance is not what's going to be on screen.
And I always used to feel tortured by that.
I give him all of the credit in the world, because a lot of people would see it as this amazing digital achievement. But I know that there was so much more behind that. And obviously it is an incredible digital achievement.
Thank
his
you.
work is some of the best I've ever seen. But it's
Please
also
toot your own
because
horn.
emotionally
I
you
appreciate
invest
that.
because of the performance.
Using
They were
Andy
like, this
Serkis
was incredible
on set
digital performance.
to provide us with a physical reference of Gollum actually led to quite a critical redesign of the character itself.
We had a workshop design Gollum back in 1998, way before Peter cast the voice talent that he wanted.
And we were facing a situation where we were, wanting to use Andy as the reference for the performance, and yet our Gollum computer puppet wasn't able to look that much like Andy Serkis.
We had never really considered that the voice artist that would play Gollum would ultimately drive Gollum's character. So when Andy finally turned up in New Zealand, we came to appreciate that in his face was Gollum.
Also, Pete had actually gone one step further, and in a flashback scene for Return of the King, when Smeagol first finds the ring, he actually cast Andy as Smeagol. And so, that set it in stone for me. It was like, okay,
oh my God, I didn't even
so
notice.
800 years on,
I didn't even
the
realize.
the ring, and it was like, he's going to be based off Andy.
And I suggested to everybody that, look, listen, you know what? Why don't we just take a breath here and redesign
fantastic.
Gollum?
We were already in production. We were already doing animation. And this became difficult because we were basically going to recast a main actor.
And that just put the design team into a tizzy, because this has to be done as fast as it can possibly be done, because the entire facility is waiting to work on Gollum shots.
So Christian Rivers went and took a picture of Andy Serkis and took a picture of Gollum.
And I did this drawing, and I just, sketched in characteristics based off Andy's facial structure and proportions. Obviously mutated and changed to look like Gollum, but the shapes originally, could have been Andy's.
And basically we ended up having to remodel Gollum to this new design.
And then Andy Serkis, the ultimate sport that he is, he was just willing to get down and do anything to help us make this work.
Scan my face into a computer, and then he'd get me to make all these facial poses, and we'd have long conversations, and he'd be talking, then he'd go, yeah, Andy, can you just do that for me?
I can't stop smiling. This
Mike
is so
Asquith
wonderful,
and Jamie
you guys.
Biswarck got involved, and did sort of sculptural maquettes.
When doing the redesign, I looked at a lot of footage of Andy, and I would just watch what Andy's face was doing, because the guy can just do such diverse things with his face.
And Jamie finally did the definitive resculpt or redesign.
As Jamie would sculpt something, likewise, Bay could sculpt it digitally and check whether the very musculature that Jamie was developing would give the animation purposes that he needed and that the animation team needed to bring Gollum to life.
It would just kind of go back and forth, and Jamie would come by, we'd sit at my desk, and I would pull the eyebrows up and down to see how his sculpt would move. Jamie would go, yeah, we should probably change this and this, and then he would go back and sculpt it into clay. And Jamie actually detailed it back in the physical world. And in the end, we had this beautiful sculpture that Jamie and I and everybody had worked on, but Jamie had really owned. And Peter's sitting there spinning it around on the table, and he spins it around, and I'm standing there sort of like kneeling on the floor going, oh, sweet dear God.
Yeah, okay, please.
And he stops and he looks at me and he goes, go.
When he'd done his final resculpture and it was approved, I was just like, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, when Andy showed up, he walked into the room and looked at it, and he goes, he looked at it and he started laughing, and he said, it looks like my dad and my newborn baby mixed together.
When they finally finished it in May, we in the animation department had a lot of catching up to do.
We'd already been doing animation with the old facial design.
Oh, look
so
at
with
that.
the new one, you would load up your scene, and instead of Gollum looking happy, he looked kind of, like one muscle tweak would be way out of whack, and some animation controls weren't the same. So we had to go back and reanimate a lot.
And so at Christmas, right around the time that Fellowship was released, we then started the mammoth task of basically rebuilding the previous 2 years worth of work in about 2.5 months.
And I think that was a really critical thing to do. I'm pleased that we did it, and I think, it was worth all the pain and the agonizing.
In the end, I think Gollum ended up looking so much better than he would have otherwise.
Yeah.
Peter felt
I
that
agree.
he wanted Andy's performance to move the Gollum puppet, and so we used the motion capture technique heavily.
Motion capture involves placing dots on a suit that an actor wears.
And the dots kind of are reference points to joints in my body, and they'll be picked up by cameras all around.
Not cameras that shoot film, but simply cameras that gather the electronic data that's reflecting off of these little points.
What that does is it gives us a 3D representation of Andy in the digital world.
Mm-hmm.
Basically what we're getting is his body movement and his skeleton movement. So we're essentially capturing the essence of Andy.
And the motion capture system actually allows you to look at that in real time. A very crude model of Gollum was actually on our screens as we were doing the motion capture. So over here would be Andy moving around, and you just flick your eyes from Andy down to the screen, and you were seeing, a rough version of the Gollum character doing the same thing. It was kind of a bit spooky.
Right.
This is really, really good to do. I've got more time to experiment, really. It's a lot of experimentation. Basically, Fran was there, and we would evolve scene. So we change them each take, you know, because that's the great thing about motion capture. It doesn't cost much in terms of, it's not 35mm film. It's like, I mean, you can reset very quickly. You can go back on scenes again and again and again and change them. And there was a certain amount of improvisation. I put in that song, the Gollum singing on a rock. I wanted something.
I am outdone. This is like the best video ever so far. Oh my God. This might be better than the movies, the whole appendices, because this is just fantastic. I can't say fantastic enough.
Anything, obviously, that I've ever done before in my life. And people used to come down on the motion capture stage and go, you realise you are making film history here. And I kind of was like, well, yeah, because it just feels like history. It's this kind of confluence of all these different skills and people's energy that is making this thing special.
Determining how Gollum was going to animate was just an interesting exercise, because we all had some ideas about what worked and what might not work.
Okay, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and stop the editing for this video right here, and we will continue along with part 2 of the Taming of Sméagol next week. Thank you again for joining me. You'll see my actual in the moment recap next week, but as I was re-editing this video, I was overcome with emotion again. You know, this video really just put the appendices over the top for me. You know, I was just beside myself with an emotion that I didn't even have words for. And yeah, in my recap, I mentioned that all the words that I could come up with just really paled in comparison to how I was really feeling. And I still feel that way. Like, I still can't come up with any words, even though I've already watched this particular video like 2 weeks ago. So it was just so... It was such an enchanted feeling for me, you know. I mean, really, I was just wrapped up in a warm blanket of enchantment. I could have cried, actually. I could have cried a couple of times, but I was like holding it back because I don't want to be known as a YouTube crybaby. I'm a hypersensitive person, and I don't know if you've ever met anyone who was hypersensitive, but I could literally just cry. But I didn't want to start crying, because then I would not have been able to stop. I would have been crying, just sobbing throughout the whole thing, just because it was just so wonderful. It just really was. It just touched my heart so deeply. Because it just... I'm still speechless, you guys. It just put me in a whole different emotional space. Like, to see that, to just be so impressed by a performance and by just the production team, just everyone, right? The camaraderie and just the sheer brilliance of the level of skill that these people had to put all of these things together, right? Just the fact that they came together to brainstorm and just came up with they initially wanted Gollum to just be a voiceover actor, and then he wound up coming in and stealing the whole show, quite frankly. I mean, my goodness. So I'm just gonna stop it there, because I said you know, quite a bit at the end of the video, so you'll see more of my recap next week. Okay. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Until next time, let's flow.